I'm Tony Jaa from Thailand and play Decha.
Tony Jaa was once called the future of martial arts cinema. From Ong-Bak to Tom-Yum-Goong, he stunned the world with action so raw and real that it seemed unstoppable. But behind the scenes, his story took a very different turn, one filled with pressure, betrayal, and choices that changed his career forever. So, what really happened to Tony Jaa, and why do so many fans call his journey utterly heartbreaking? Join us as we uncover the rise, the fall, and the legacy of a man who redefined action movies. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. From fields to fame. Tony Jaa grew up in a small part of Thailand called Surin Province. His family lived on land where they planted rice. His parents, Ren Sipe and Thong Di Yum, worked long days in the fields. Their life followed a steady routine, planting, tending, and harvesting rice depending on the season. The days were shaped by simple tasks, by the weather, and by the needs of the farm. There were no bright city lights, no busy streets, and no movie theaters nearby.
But now, best to the bone. Yeah, I'm look best, but...
This quiet, steady life was the world Tony first knew. Even so, the world beyond the fields reached him in small ways. Temple fairs came to the villages. At those fairs, people watched films and performances. Tony saw pictures of fighters and heroes on the big screens. He watched Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. Those men moved in ways he had never seen in his own village. Their speed, control, and bold moves stayed in his mind. Watching them made Tony feel something new. He did not see them simply as actors. To him, they were examples of strength and beauty in movement. He later said, "It was so beautiful, so heroic, that I wanted to do it too." After seeing those films, Tony began to copy what he had seen. He practiced kicks, punches, and flips in the rice paddies. He spent hours repeating the same moves until his body started to remember them. The fields became his training space. There were no teachers from big schools. There were no mirrors or modern training tools. What he had was determination and the images of the heroes he admired. At age 10, Tony took his first formal step into martial arts. He started training in Muay Thai at the local temple. This was not a gym with modern equipment. The training came from local masters and older fighters who knew the sport from experience, not from textbooks. They taught him basic stance, strikes, and the discipline needed to train every day. The training was strict and physical, but it fit the hard work he already knew from farm life. As he grew stronger, Tony began to fight in small local matches. These fights were often tough and straightforward. They tested his body and his will. Each fight taught him a little more about timing, pain, and focus. Little by little, people around the area started to notice a young fighter who trained in a simple temple and moved with clear purpose. Tony's early years in Surin set the foundation for everything that came next: skill, discipline, and a deep wish to become more than his surroundings had planned for him. Next, you'll see how a chance meeting changed his life forever. Trapped in the shadows. Tony Jaa's life took a sharp turn when he met a man who would change everything for him. That man was Pana Ritikrai, a well-known stuntman and director in Thailand. Pana had already built a reputation for designing dangerous and exciting action sequences. When he saw Tony's natural ability, his speed, and his fearless dedication, he knew there was something special about him. Pana invited Tony to join his stunt team. For Tony, this was the first real step into the movie world. He saw it as an opportunity to get closer to his dream of becoming like the heroes he had admired as a boy. Life on the stunt team was far from glamorous. For the next 14 years, Tony worked as a stunt double and background performer. His job was to do the things that actors either could not or would not do. This meant dangerous falls, high jumps, and fight sequences where every mistake could cause serious injury. Audiences would watch the finished films and cheer for the stars, but behind those scenes, Tony was the one putting his body on the line. One of the most memorable stunts from his early career showed just how far he was willing to push himself. In a commercial, Tony had to leap onto an elephant's back and hold on to its tusks while the animal moved. The timing and balance required for this were almost impossible, yet Tony completed it. This kind of work demanded both physical strength and absolute focus. Over time, he collected countless bruises, sprains, and injuries, but he rarely complained. To him, every painful fall was part of the process. Even though Tony was giving his all, very few people knew his name. The credit almost always went to the actor he was doubling for. While others enjoyed the fame, Tony stayed in the shadows. But these years were not wasted. He was quietly building the skills that would later shock the world. Stunt work gave him precision, perfect control of his body, and an instinct for timing that no classroom could teach. Every fight scene, every dangerous stunt, and every long day on set was a lesson. By the end of those 14 years, Tony had become more than just a stuntman. He was ready for his chance, and the moment was closer than anyone expected. Soon, Tony would step out of the shadows and into the spotlight with a film that no one could ignore. The explosion nobody saw coming. In 2003, Tony Jaa finally had the moment he had been waiting for. After years of working as a stuntman in the background, he was given the lead role in Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior. This film was unlike anything most audiences had ever seen. There were no wires pulling him into the air, no computer effects to make the moves look more dramatic, and no stunt doubles stepping in to take his place. Every punch, kick, flip, and fall was Tony himself. What viewers were watching was pure athletic ability and years of disciplined training put directly onto the screen. The filming process was as dangerous as it was impressive. Many of the stunts in Ong-Bak pushed Tony's body far past normal limits. He tore ligaments, sprained his ankle, and picked up several injuries during production. Each time, he pushed himself to recover quickly and keep going, knowing that this was his one chance to prove himself. One of the most dangerous moments came during a scene where Tony's pants were set on fire while he fought enemies. This was not a controlled digital effect. It was real fire burning up his body. Flames spread quickly, reaching his face and singeing his eyebrows, eyelashes, and even parts of his nose. Most people would have stopped immediately, but Tony didn't. He kept performing through the pain, finishing the take because he understood how important the scene was for the movie. To make it even more extreme, the team had to shoot the scene more than once to get it right. Tony endured it all without hesitation. When Ong-Bak was released, the reaction was explosive. Audiences around the world were stunned by what they saw.
Asian guy talk, "Sawadee krap, sawadee krap." I feel like
The fights were raw, fast, and brutal, without the polished style that many martial arts movies had at the time. People could feel the weight of every strike, and they could see the danger in every stunt. Critics and fans immediately began comparing Tony Jaa to legends like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. Some even went as far as to call him the next Bruce Lee, a title given only to those who truly shook up the martial arts world. For Tony, this film was the breakthrough that took him from an unknown stuntman to an international star. But Tony wasn't finished. His next movie would push things even further and raise the stakes higher than ever. Raising the stakes. After the success of Ong-Bak, Tony Jaa faced the challenge of proving that his first hit was not just luck. In 2005, he returned with Tom-Yum-Goong, released internationally as The Protector. This film raised the stakes in every way and gave Tony the chance to show a new side of his creativity and connection to Thai culture. The story centered on elephants, which hold deep meaning in Thailand. Elephants are considered a national symbol and a source of pride. They are tied to the country's history, traditions, and even spiritual beliefs. In the film, Tony's character travels to Australia to rescue his beloved elephants that have been stolen. This simple storyline gave him a strong emotional purpose, but it also let him bring Thai cultural identity to international audiences. Beyond just using elephants as part of the story, Tony even developed a new fighting style for the film. He called it the Muay Thai elephant style, where his strikes and grappling moves mirrored the movements of elephants, powerful, heavy, and unyielding. This made the action not only entertaining but also rooted in heritage. One of the film's greatest highlights was a sequence that became legendary in the world of action cinema. Tony performed a continuous 4-minute fight scene inside a restaurant, moving from the bottom floor all the way to the top. The camera never cut away, meaning every punch, throw, and kick had to be perfect. Along the way, Tony fought dozens of opponents, using his environment as weapons and showing off incredible endurance. The scene felt like he was working through levels of a challenge, each enemy tougher than the last. By the time he reached the top, audiences were left breathless, knowing they had seen something completely new. The impact of Tom-Yum-Goong was massive. It cemented Tony's reputation not only as a martial artist, but also as an innovator in the film industry. He wasn't just repeating the formula of Ong-Bak, he was pushing the genre forward with daring ideas and unmatched execution. Even other martial arts stars took notice. Donnie Yen, one of the most respected names in the industry, admitted in an interview that after watching Tony Jaa, he felt the need to raise the level of his own fight choreography. That statement alone showed how much influence Tony's work had in such a short time. With Tom-Yum-Goong, Tony Jaa had proven that he wasn't a one-hit wonder. He was here to change martial arts films forever. But with rising fame came new pressures, and behind the scenes, cracks were starting to form. Betrayal behind fame. After the release of Ong-Bak and Tom-Yum-Goong, Tony Jaa was no longer just another martial artist trying to make his mark. He had become the face of Thai martial arts cinema, carrying both the pride of his country and the weight of international expectations. Audiences wanted more breathtaking action, more dangerous stunts, and more films that pushed the limits. With each success, the pressure on Tony grew. Every new project had to be bigger, faster, and more spectacular than the last. On top of the physical demands, there were also creative challenges. Tony was not only starring in the films, but also becoming more involved in shaping them. This level of responsibility was new to him, and it began to take its toll. One of the biggest challenges came in his relationship with his mentor, Pana Ritikrai. Pana was the man who had discovered Tony, trained him, and guided him through the world of film. For years, they worked side by side, with Pana directing the action and Tony bringing it to life. But as Tony's fame grew, so did the differences in their vision. They began to disagree on creative direction, particularly regarding the kinds of projects Tony should pursue. One highly anticipated project, a film called Sword, was cancelled after disagreements between them. Fans never got to see what might have been, and the whispers of tension between student and mentor began to spread. Although neither Pana nor Tony spoke publicly about their falling out, it was clear that something had changed. At the same time, opportunities outside Thailand were beginning to appear. Jackie Chan, one of Tony's childhood idols, personally tried to bring him into Rush Hour 3. This could have been a life-changing moment, a chance for Tony to break into Hollywood and share the screen with a global legend. But the timing was impossible. Tony was already committed to making Ong-Bak 2, a massive production in Thailand. Bound by obligations and loyalty, he had to turn down the offer. For many fans, this felt like a missed chance that could have taken his career to another level. These cracks, the growing expectations, the strain with his mentor, and the missed opportunities were small at first, but they marked the beginning of a difficult period in Tony Jaa's journey. Soon, those pressures would push Tony past his breaking point, leading to one of the most dramatic turns in his career: collapse on set. After 2 successful films, Tony Jaa's next big challenge was Ong-Bak 2. This project was supposed to prove that he could carry an even larger production and show his abilities not only as a fighter, but also as a filmmaker. The film was ambitious, filled with bigger stunts, elaborate sets, and complex fight choreography. But behind the camera, things were far from smooth. The production quickly became chaotic. Budgets grew, schedules stretched, and pressure built from every side. Tony had taken on more responsibility than ever before, and the weight of it all began to show. In the middle of filming, the situation took a shocking turn. Tony disappeared from the set without warning. For weeks, nobody knew where he had gone. Later, it was revealed that he had fled to a Buddhist monastery. The move sparked endless rumors. Some said he had suffered a mental breakdown from the stress. Others believed he was simply exhausted, both physically and emotionally. After years of pushing his body and spirit to their absolute limit. Whatever the reason, his sudden retreat left the film's future uncertain and raised serious questions about whether Tony could continue. Eventually, Tony returned to finish the project. Ong-Bak 2 was completed and released, and while it contained brutal fight scenes and showcased his remarkable talent, the movie itself felt uneven. The behind-the-scenes struggles were clear in the final product. Some fans admired the intensity of the action, but many noticed that the story was messy, and the energy that had once defined Tony's work seemed harder to find. The situation did not improve with Ong-Bak 3. The sequel followed directly after the events of the second film, but by this time, the problems of the past production weighed heavily. The film lacked the spark and excitement of his earlier work. The action was still present, but it felt slower, more restrained, and less inspired. Viewers sensed that Tony himself was drained. What had once been fresh and full of fire now seemed like an obligation rather than a passion. What happened next shocked everyone. Tony walked away from movies entirely and entered a monastery for real. Fleeing to the temple. In 2010, after years of stress, pressure, and non-stop physical punishment, Tony Jaa made a decision that surprised almost everyone. He stepped away from the movie industry and entered a Buddhist monastery. There, he was officially ordained as a monk. For someone who had been in the spotlight, performing dangerous stunts, and carrying the hopes of an entire industry, this was a dramatic change. Instead of long film shoots and demanding fight scenes, his days were now spent in meditation, prayer, and simple routines inside the temple. Tony's choice was more than just a pause in his career, it was an escape. By that point, he had endured constant expectations from studios, the exhaustion of filming Ong-Bak 2 and 3, and the weight of being seen as the future of martial arts cinema. His body had been pushed to the edge, and emotionally, he was drained. Life inside the temple gave him a chance to breathe. It offered him peace and silence that he couldn't find on a film set. For a man who had lived years under pressure, it was a way to heal and find balance again. In Thailand, this decision was not unusual. Temporary ordination is a respected tradition. Many Thai men, at some point in their lives, spend time as monks. For some, it lasts only a few weeks. For others, several months. It is seen as a way to honor one's family, to gain merit, and to reflect on life. In Tony's case, it was also about stepping away from the chaos that had surrounded him for so long. Within Thai culture, his choice was understood and respected as part of a spiritual journey. When he returned, it wasn't just back to movies. It was also to a new chapter in his personal life. Love amid chaos. After leaving the monastery, Tony Jaa slowly began to rebuild a sense of normal life. For years, his world had been filled with cameras, dangerous stunts, and endless pressure from the film industry. But in 2012, he took an important step in his personal life that gave him something very different from fame or physical achievement. He got married. Tony married his longtime girlfriend, Parat Chotiwatan. She had been by his side before the height of his international fame, and their relationship was built on trust and familiarity rather than the spotlight of celebrity. Their wedding was not about Hollywood attention or publicity. It was about stability and starting a new chapter. Soon after, Tony and Parrot became parents. Together, they welcomed 2 daughters into their lives. Becoming a father gave Tony a role he had never experienced before, one where his strength and focus were not for action scenes, but for raising a family. After years of traveling for films and putting his body on the line for his career, this part of his life gave him something grounding and personal. His children were a reminder that there was more to his life than the expectations of fans or the demands of studios. For a time, it seemed like Tony had found the balance he had been searching for. The stress of constant productions and the weight of being seen as the next Bruce Lee were behind him. Instead, he was spending time with his wife and daughters, building a family life that was private and steady. Friends and colleagues noted that this period brought him peace. It was a contrast to the years before, when he had been caught in the chaos of difficult productions and public rumors. That return, however, came with a hidden struggle, one that involved contracts, control, and heartbreak. The studio chains. Behind Tony Jaa's rise as a global action star was a reality that many fans never knew about. From the very beginning of his career, he was tied to Sahamongkol Film, one of Thailand's biggest studios. At first, this partnership looked like an opportunity. The studio gave him the platform to make Ong-Bak and Tom-Yum-Goong, the very films that made him famous. But hidden behind the success was a contract that left Tony with little control over his own career. The agreement with Sahamongkol was exclusive, which meant Tony could not work on films outside the company without their approval. They decided what projects he took, how often he worked, and even how much money he earned. In exchange, the studio promised security. They also helped provide for his family, which in Thai culture carried great importance. Supporting parents and relatives is a duty, and Sahamongkol used that responsibility as a way to keep him tied to them. What seemed like protection at first soon became a chain around his freedom. Over time, this control came at a heavy cost. Tony wanted to expand, try different roles, and work with international filmmakers, but the contract blocked most of those chances. While the world was calling for him after his early films, he was stuck making sequels and studio projects in Thailand. For an artist who had already shown incredible creativity with his fighting style, this was frustrating. His career was being limited not by a lack of talent, but by the terms of a deal. By 2013, Tony decided he needed to break away. Hollywood was reaching out, and he knew he had to seize the chance before it was too late. But Sahamongkol was not ready to let him go. When he tried to join Fast and Furious 7, the studio filed legal action to stop him. They even demanded $50 million in damages, a number so extreme that it shocked the industry. The case dragged on and created serious obstacles for Tony. When Hollywood finally opened its doors, the world expected Tony to shine, but what followed showed a very different story. Hollywood's empty promise. After breaking away from the Thai studio system, Tony Jaa stepped into a new phase of his career where Hollywood finally noticed him. He took roles in big international films such as Fast and Furious, 7 and XXX, Return of Xander Cage. In those projects, he shared screen time with stars like Vin Diesel and with fellow martial artists such as Donnie Yen. For many viewers, seeing Tony alongside global names felt like proof that he had arrived on the world stage. What followed, however, showed how different the international film system can be from the Thai movies that made him famous. In Hollywood projects, Tony's parts were often smaller and more focused on action than on character. He was asked to perform key fight scenes and showpieces, But he was not always given long stretches of dialogue or deep character development. His screen time was frequently limited to set pieces where his physical skills mattered most. When he did move, the audience could still see his speed, balance, and precision. Those moments reminded people why he had become a star. Yet these flashes of brilliance were framed inside larger movies, where he was not the main driver of story or emotion. A common claim was that Tony struggled in Hollywood because of language, that his English held him back from bigger parts. That explanation is only part of the story. By 2014, Tony was giving interviews in English and handling media appearances with growing confidence. Language was not the main barrier. The larger issue was the way international productions use action stars. Casting choices, franchise rules, and production practices often limit what a guest star can do. Fight choreography and on-set decisions are controlled by multiple teams, so a performer who once had creative freedom in Thailand could find himself constrained abroad. The result was a mixed picture. On film, Tony still delivered impressive action. Off film, the industry systems and the kinds of roles he was offered changed how he could be shown to the world. Fans saw talent and flashes of brilliance, but they also saw a great performer placed inside a different set of rules and fewer chances to lead. The flame fading. After breaking free from Sahamongkol, Tony Jaa continued to work, but his career never returned to the same explosive heights of the early 2000s. He took part in several Western projects, including Skin Trade, Never Back Down, No Surrender, and the ensemble action film Triple Threat, where he starred alongside other martial arts names like Iko Uwais, Scott Adkins, and Tiger Chen. These movies gave him a chance to show his skills to international audiences, and in each of them, there were moments where his speed and physical reminded people of why he had once been hailed as the next great martial arts icon. But even with these projects, something felt different. None of them captured the same electricity that Ong-Bak or Tom-Yum-Goong had created. The choreography was solid, but the energy was missing. The daring stunts, the brutal creativity, and the sense of watching something no one had seen before, those elements had been tied to the unique conditions of his Thai productions. In Western films, where safety rules, budgets, and choreography teams shaped every move, that raw and unfiltered style could not fully return. One striking detail is that, since 2013, Tony Jaa has not appeared in a single Thai production. The same country that had lifted him from a rural rice field to international screens no longer featured him in its cinema. Part of this is because of the legal battles and bitterness with Sahamongkol, which left doors closed at home. Ironically, Thailand was the place where Tony had the most freedom and creative control. Yet those opportunities were gone, and abroad, he often found himself limited to supporting roles, working inside systems that gave him far less say in how fights were shot or how his characters were presented. This created a heartbreaking contrast. Tony Jaa's journey had once been the story of a farmer's son who reshaped the world of martial arts cinema, inspiring millions and proving that sheer dedication could create something unforgettable. But contracts, burnout, and the structures of the global industry reshaped that story. He remained active, still capable of moving with speed and power, but the fire had changed. It was no longer the wildfire of Ong-Bak that burned across the world. Instead, it became a smaller, flickering flame, still alive, but no longer blazing at full strength. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more stories like this.